At 2:17 a.m. on a cold December night in 1945, a U.S. Navy cargo plane vanished somewhere between Florida and the Caribbean. No distress call, no debris, no bodies. By sunrise, the official explanation was already written: navigational error. But classified documents, eyewitness accounts, and decades of quiet contradictions tell a very different story. One involving missing crews, altered logs, and a mystery the U.S. government never fully explained. What follows is a true historical mystery, reconstructed from declassified files, naval records, newspaper archives, and first-hand testimony. Part 1. The disappearance that wouldn't stay buried. In the final weeks of World War II, the United States military was exhausted, overstretched, and rushing to return to peacetime normalcy. Bases across Florida were winding down operations. Pilots with hundreds of combat hours were suddenly flying training routes over familiar waters. Nothing about December 5, 1945 suggested history was about to bend. At Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers sat on the runway. They belonged to Flight 19, a routine navigation training squadron. The mission was simple: fly east over the Atlantic, practice bombing runs near the Bahamas, then return home before dusk. The instructor in charge was Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, a veteran pilot with over 2,500 flight hours, including combat experience in the Pacific Theater. He was not inexperienced, he was not reckless, and according to everyone who knew him, he was meticulous about instruments. At 2:10 p.m., Flight 19 took off. For nearly an hour, everything went exactly as planned. Then, the radio transmissions changed. At 3:45 p.m., Fort Lauderdale received a confused message from Taylor. "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." This alone wasn't unusual. Pilots got temporarily disoriented all the time. What alarmed ground control was what came next. Taylor reported that both his compasses had stopped working. In 1945, losing a compass was rare. Losing both was almost unheard of. Ground control instructed Taylor to fly west toward the setting sun, which would bring them back to Florida. Taylor hesitated. He believed he was over the Florida Keys, not the Bahamas. If that were true, flying west would take them deeper into the Gulf of Mexico. Other pilots in Flight 19 began transmitting independently. "We're lost. Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." At this point, the weather began to deteriorate. Winds picked up, visibility dropped, and fuel was running low. At 6:20 p.m., Taylor made a decision that sealed their fate. "We'll fly 030 degrees until we hit land." That heading pointed northeast, straight into the open Atlantic. The final transmission from Flight 19 was recorded at 7:04 p.m. "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." Then, silence. 5 planes, 14 men, gone. But this is where the mystery deepens. Within minutes of losing contact, the Navy launched a massive search and rescue operation involving over 300 aircraft and ships, covering more than 250,000 square miles. One of those aircraft was a PBM Mariner, a rescue seaplane carrying 13 crew members. 20 minutes after takeoff, a merchant ship reported seeing a fireball explode in the sky. The rescue plane never returned. Now, 27 men were missing. The Navy initially concluded the Mariner had exploded due to fuel vapor, a known issue with that aircraft model. The report was quietly filed, case closed. Except, the evidence didn't match. No wreckage from Flight 19 was ever found, not a wing,
Not a radio, not a single floating fuel drum. In one of the most heavily trafficked naval regions in the world, nothing surfaced. Even stranger, decades later, declassified Navy documents revealed that some radio operators continued to hear fragmented transmissions from Flight 19 hours after their supposed fuel exhaustion point. Transmissions that should have been impossible. One log entry, dated the next morning, contained a single unsettling line. Signals detected. Source uncertain. Origin appears displaced. Displaced from where? In 1950, the Navy quietly amended its official conclusion. The original cause, pilot error, was softened. Responsibility was reassigned to unknown environmental factors. That phrase would become a pattern. Over the next several decades, similar disappearances were retroactively grouped into what journalists later called the Bermuda Triangle. The name stuck. The explanations never did. What most people don't know is that the U.S. Navy stopped publicly discussing Flight 19 altogether by the early 1960s. Requests from families were redirected. Records went missing. Some were reclassified without explanation. And then, in 1974, something unexpected happened. A civilian diver searching a reef off the coast of Florida found a serial-numbered aircraft component that matched a TBM Avenger, but not one officially listed as lost in that region. When he reported it, federal authorities confiscated the item within 48 hours. No report was ever released. This is not a ghost story. This is not science fiction. This is a documented historical mystery, one the U.S. government never fully explained. And Flight 19 was only the beginning.